Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Kita akan bersiaran secara atas talian dan menerusi rakaman video. Okey, chapter yang akan saya terangkan ialah dalam lesson plan kita ialah chapter 3 iaitu International Trade and Investment. Okey. So, a few things that you need to know from this chapter ialah kita akan faham apa sebenarnya yang menyebabkan international trade. Kita akan summarizekan and discuss the classical country-based theories. Okay, and then kita akan tengok modern firm-based theories and be able to describe and categorize the different forms of international investment. And we will see looking at the reasons for FDI, and we will be able to summarize the supply, demand and political factors influencing the FDI. Okay. Alright. So, what is exactly trade? Okay. So, trade is a voluntary exchange of goods. Okay. Hold on. Voluntary exchange of goods, services, assets or money between one person or organization and another. Voluntary means both parties to the transaction must be able to believe that they will gain from the exchange, or else they will not complete the trade. Okay. So, international trade is between the residents of two countries. The residents might be individuals, firms, not-for-profit organizations, or other forms of associations. Okay, right? So, why does international trade occur? So, bila kita tengok macam ni, kita akan faham bahawa tadi kita dah tengok trade is a voluntary exchange of goods. Okay. Bila voluntary exchange of goods, maknanya transaction kena jadi. Okay. Kalau tak jadi, maknanya tak complete lah. Okay. So, kenapa international trade ni occur? So, bila melibatkan economic theory ataupun business practice ataupun yang melibatkan international punya policies, both parties will be orang kata ada benefit. Okay, and of course the exports that actually benefits the additional of economic activity. Maknanya dia akan bagi sama kata kesan pada domestic economy itself. And obviously bila ada exports dan imports ni, okay, it can pressure the domestic, maknanya imports ni akan pressure the domestic suppliers and to cut their prices, maknanya ada competitive wujud, orang kata competitiveness wujud, and if they fail to kata comply with that demand, maknanya tak ada competition lah wujud, and itu akan menyebabkan closed factories and unemployed workers. Kalau kita tengok balik, bila pandemic occurs to us, things happens in such a way, maknanya sebab kita fail to respond orang kata with the demands. So, some of the factories close sebab tak ada, satu permintaan ada tapi tak boleh transaction tak boleh terjadi sebab pandemik COVID-19 telah beri kesan yang sangat mendalam kepada the international trade itself. Okay. So, these are exactly the international trade and the world economy since 1950. So, it's okay. It's good for you to look at the current growth of world exports if you can see the graph from pandemic hit us and until now. Okay, right? So, EU, Canada, United States and Canada and others is actually, kalau you tengok dekat sini, such, kata all the international trade ada important direct and indirect effects to the national economy. Maknanya macam mana pun dia akan ada kesan dia. Right? So, early country-based theories, okay, and modern firm-based theories. Kalau you tengok kat sini, kalau early country theories, dia sebenarnya it's focus on the individual country. This country sebenarnya particularly useful for describing trade in commodity, standardized and undifferentiated goods. Contohnya oil, sugar, lumber that are typically bought on the basis of the price rather than brand name. Ini masa early country based theories lah. However, MNCs dia pergi bila dia dah rose, maknanya dia dah naik, okay, dia shifted their attention to firms role in promoting international trade. Maknanya itu yang datangnya modern firm based theories. Okay, focus on the firm's role in promoting international trade, and then dia pergi balik pada describing patterns of trade in differentiated goods. Okay, awal tu mula-mula pergi pada undifferentiated goods, sekarang ni dia pergi pada differentiated goods. So, contohnya automobiles, consumer electronics and personal care products for which brand name is quite important component, okay, dalam customer purchase decision. Okay, right? And bila kita kata classical country based trade theories, inilah nama dia yang akan kita tengok. So mercantilism is a 16 country theory, economic philosophy, okay, yang menyatakan bahawa country's wealth is measured by its holding of gold and silver. Ni mercantilism. I think you have learned this when you learn kata principle of economics, macro saya tak ingat. So country's goal should be to enlarge this holding by promoting exports and discouraging imports. So dia kena export. Okay, dia tak boleh ambil import. So benda yang orang biasa tak boleh nak terima bila kita nak tengok kekayaan negara kita based on kata emas dengan silver kita. But those were the days lah. Okay, but because dia percaya, mercantilism ni, teori ni percaya bahawa members of society ataupun mercantilist policies ni are still politically attract to some firms and their workers. So modern supporters of such policies are called neo-mercantilist ataupun protectionist, which is, in my opinion, I believe, if you hold gold very well but you don't invest, akan ada masalah lah untuk keadaan sekarang. Tapi which negara memang patut simpan kata these things because benda ni akan ada nilainya. However, we are talking about theories right now. So those were the days. Mercantilism ni antara benda yang paling penting lah. Okay, right? Absolute advantage, bila Adam Smith, okay, ni orang-orangnya lah, okay, neo-mercantilism ni has kata bila Adam Smith ni, dia Scottish ni economist, and dia adalah father of free market economics. So, of course lah dia akan hentam ataupun dia akan tidak setuju basis of mercantilism because dia kata mercantilism weakens a country, and then dia tak bagi kata mercantilism punya teori ni akan menyebabkan confused dari segi macam mana kita nak janakan kata wealth of the country dengan acquisition of treasure tu. Okay, so bila jadi macam ni, Smith attack kata basis of mercantilism, dan dia menunjukkan bahawa bila mercantilism ni dilobikan seperti itu, dia akan mengambil hak individual untuk berniaga ataupun untuk trade freely. Okay, and to benefit from the voluntary exchanges. Okay, sebab kita melibatkan trading kan. So proses ni melibatkan kata import. Sebab dalam mercantilism dia discouraging import. Okay, so absolute advantage theory kata kita kena encourage import. So a country must squander its resources producing goods, and if it is not suited to produce, maknanya dia mesti keluarkan produk dia supaya benda tu sama balance Akan ada masuk dan akan ada keluar. The inefficiencies caused by mercantilism ialah they reduce the wealth of the country as a whole. Even though ada orang akan benefit daripada trading tu. Right? So, Smith sebenarnya dia advocated free trade among countries as a means of enlarging the company's wealth. Okay, free trade maknanya dia akan enable a country to expand of orang kata the goods and services daripada konsep ekspor dan import, and it will be available by specializing in the production of some goods and services of trading for others. Okay, so inilah dia Adam Smith's absolute advantage theory. Maknanya dia suggest that countries should export goods and services for which is more productive than other countries and import those goods and services for which other countries are more productive than it is. Maknanya ada, kalau you tengok dekat sini, kalau kita tak mampu keluarkan produk tu, kita kena ambil daripada orang tu. Ataupun kalau kita kita boleh ekspor produk ni sebab kita ada kelebihan, so kita akan ekspor dan kita import benda lain daripada negara lain. Okay. So maknanya di sinilah dia yang dia kata absolute advantage, maknanya negara kita ada kekuatan untuk mengeluarkan produk tu dan kita import produk daripada negara lain yang kita tak ada kekuatan. Contohnya cheese. Kita tak produce cheese. Okay, Malaysia tak produce cheese. So kita akan import cheese daripada negara lain. Tapi kita ada kekuatan untuk produce kelapa sawit. So, kita akan ekspor kelapa sawit kita. Alright? So, ini ialah absolute advantage yang boleh awak tengok dalam buku. Ini contohnya lah yang selalu saya terangkan. But just now I just present to you dari segi cheese dengan kelapa sawit. Sama juga kalau you tengok dekat sini. France has an absolute, kata kita tengok daripada awal daripada ni, table ni. France and Japan, only 2 goods, wine and clock radius. Okay, only 1 factor of production labor. Okay, so table 6.1 ni, dia shows the output of 2 goods per hour, labor of the 2 countries. In France, 1 hour of labor can produce either 2 bottles of wine or 3 clock radius. In Japan, 1 hour of labor can produce either 1 bottle of wine or 5 clock radius. France has an absolute advantage in production of wine. An hour of labor produces 2 bottles in France but only in Japan. Japan has an absolute advantage in production of clock radius. So, nampak kat sini. So, both will be better off bila nak trade. Itu yang suppose France agrees to exchange 2 bottles of wine for 4 clock radius. Only 1 hour of French labor is needed to produce the 2 bottles of wine bound for Japan. In return, France will get 4 clock radius from Japan. So, ini namanya dia akan pergi pada penukaran produk yang lebih memberikan advantage. Okay, so by trading with Japan rather than producing the clock radius itself, France saves 0.33 hour of labor. France can use this freed up labor to produce more wine, and which in turn can be consumed by French citizens or traded to Japan for more clock radius by allocating its scarce labor to produce goods which is more productive than Japan and then trading to Japan. France can consume more goods than it could have done in the absence of trade. So, dia akan tengok daripada konsep hour of labor ni. Sebab kita tak nak bazir waktu, kita tak pakar buat kata wine, ataupun kita tak pakar buat clock radio, so we trade with what we better off. Okay, right? So which one? Okay, bila nak tengok ni comparative advantage ni, okay. What if one country has an absolute advantage in both product? Kalau theory of absolute advantage, no trade will occur. Kalau dia je yang ada absolute advantage. Tapi kalau katakan comparative advantage, trade should still occur. Ini yang kata David Ricardo's punya comparative advantage theory, which believe bila dia ni pun ekonomis juga, dia solve this problem by developing the theory of comparative advantage. Dia state a country should produce and export those goods and services for which is relatively more productive than other countries. Sebab konsep dekat absolute advantage, you must have some advantage. You must have one advantage. Okay, so kalau you tak ada advantage, you tak boleh trade. Okay. But bila comparative advantage theory ni ada, dia akan tengok relative productivity differences. Okay, the distinction occurs between comparative advantage ni, dia cooperate dengan opportunity cost in determining which good country should produce. The opportunity cost is good in the value of what is given up for to get off the good. Okay, to get the good lah. Okay, maknanya produk yang kata available tu dia akan tengok pada opportunity cost. Okay, yang occurs. Ini dia. So, the theory of absolute advantage incorrectly suggests that no trade would occur kalau katakan dia tak ada advantage tu. Okay, so bila teori ni ada, kalau you tengok dekat jadual atas ni, Ricardo's theory looks at relative productivity differences, and the distinction occurs because comparative advantage considers the concept of opportunity cost. Okay, the value of what is given up to get a good. Dia incorporate the concept of determination of what goods a country should produce. Maknanya apa yang kau better at. Sebab kita nak ada transaction to happen. Ini dari segi formula the theory of comparative advantage. An example for kata comparative advantage tadi absolute So kita tengok balik. France also has a comparative advantage in wine. With 1 hour of labor, it produces 2 times as much. 1 hour of labor. Okay. 2 times as much as Japan, but only 0.6 times as many clock radius. Thus, France is relatively more productive in wine. Japan has a comparative advantage in clock radius with 1 hour of labor. It produced 1.67 times as many as clock radius as France, but does only 0.5 times as much wine. So Japan is relatively more productive in clock radius. Okay, so the theory of comparative advantage says that France should export wine to Japan and Japan should export clock radius to France. Okay. So, suppose productivity stays the same in Japan but doubles in France. Kita tengoklah kan, as the result of new job training program. So, table 6.2 ni, ini yang tadi kita tadi cakap, okay. So, France now produce 4 bottles of wine or 6 clock radius, okay. Ni kita tengok pada jadual ni lah, yang tadi saya sebut tu, ialah relatively. So, France now has an absolute advantage in both wine and clock radius. For each hour of labor, France can produce 3 more bottle of wine. Ni bila kita dah tengok, sebab tengok segi daripada jadual ni, the theory of comparative advantage on the other hand indicates that, okay, the trade should still occur. France is 4 times better than Japan is in wine production, but only 1.2 times better in clock radio production. Kalau tengok dari segi teori ni, sebenarnya dia akan tengok sebenarnya kau bagus lebih daripada mana. Tapi sebenarnya dia nak cakap France is comparatively better than Japan in wine production, whereas Japan is comparatively better than France in clock radio production. By the theory of comparative advantage, France should export wine to Japan and Japan should export clock radios to France. If they do so, maknanya both will be better off in trading lah. Okay? So, ini ialah classical theory based trade theories, relative factor endowments, antara teori yang agak popular juga. So, HO theory, kita panggil Heckscher-Ohlin theory. So, to two basic reservations in HO theory that are, kalau you tengok kat sini, factor endowments vary among countries. For example, Argentina has much fertile land. Saudi ada banyak minyak. Bangladesh ada large pool of unskilled labours. And then number 2 ialah goods differ according to the type of factor used to produce them. Maksudnya bila kita perlukan gandum, kita perlukan tanah yang besar. Bila kita perlukan minyak, kena ada simpanan minyak yang besar. And apparently bila nak perlukan labor tu, kena ada kilang yang banyak yang perlukan tenaga kerja. So from this observation lah, Heckscher dengan Ohlin ni develop dia teori. Dia ada orang country will have a comparative advantage in producing products that intensively use resources, factors of productions, and it has in abundance. Maknanya dia ada kekuatan dari segi dua basic observation ni. Either dia ada factor endowments, types of resources, ataupun dia punya goods differ based on the types of factor used to produce them. Faham So, bila dah World War II, kalau you tengok dalam buku ataupun teorinya, ada beberapa sebab firm-based teori ni dia ambil daripada teori yang lama dan dia jadi firm-based teori. Sebab bila growing company MNCs ni, multinational corporate companies ni, after post-war ni, so mereka punya pemahaman dan eagerness in trading. So, the inability of the country-based theories to explain and predict the existence of growth akan menyebabkan kesukaran dalam intra-industry trade. And of course, ada failure of Leontief and other researchers to apply. Ini you boleh tengok dari segi HO punya teori tadi. But yang kita nak fokus ialah based on on growing, and then the inability of the theories yang lama tu to predict the existence and growth of intra-industry trade. So, inilah dia product life cycle theory. Kalau awak belajar kata marketing pun, awak akan tengok benda yang sama. Tapi sebelum tu kita akan tengok dari segi product life cycle theory ni. Siapa yang cakap ni? Raymond Vernon. Dia from Harvard Business School. So, Vernon's theory ni dia kata consists of a product life cycle ni ada 3 stages. So, one is new product stage. Number 2 is maturing product stage. And number 3 ialah standardized product stage. Bila new product stage ni, maknanya firm ni tengah develop ataupun dia tengah introduce product in response to the domestic market lah. So, and the existence of profitable market for the product is still uncertain, tak pasti lagi. So, marketing dari segi ni mesti pastikan bahawa customer memang respond. Furthermore, bila kita tengok macam ni, investment pun akan mencanak naik lah. Sebab dia nak pastikan new product stage ni maintaining, increasing. Bila maturing product stage, maknanya demand tu dah demand of the product expands dramatically as consumers dah nampak benda tu sebagai produk yang bernilai, penting. So, innovating firm will build a new factory sebab dia dah mature kan. So, makin demand dia makin banyak. Dan satisfy, customer, the domestic, foreign demand pun dah settle down kat sini, right? Dia mula start nak berkembang, expand, emerge, and then dia akan gain earning kat situ. Bila dah masuk stage yang ketiga, iaitu standardized product stage, dia maksudnya dia dah stabilize dah. Product becomes more of a commodity, and firms are pressured to lower their manufacturing cost sebab ramai orang dah minta kan. So, harga akan makin turun sebab permintaan dah makin banyak. So, you nak compete pun you kena make sure that you nak sustain dalam business tu. So, of course, kita akan cari low labor cost. So, product begins to be imported into the innovating firm's home market by either the firm ataupun its competitors. In some cases, imports may result in the complete elimination of domestic production. Contohnya, you mungkin nampak produk tu kat luar negara tapi tak ada kat sini. Tapi kita yang produce. Contohlah, nanti kita akan tengok bila kita buat tutorial nanti. Alright. Ni dia modern firm-based trade theories. Okay. So this is orang kata modern firm-based trade theories, Linde's country similarity theory. Okay. So inter-industry trade exchange goods produced by one industry in country A for goods produced by different industry in country B. So bila such as the exchange of, maknanya yang kita tengok balik contoh French wines dengan Japanese clock radios tu kan. So bila ada intra-industry trade between, kena faham two countries of good produced by the same industry. So bila Stephen Linde ni, lagi seorang orang kata ekonomis, dia explain the phenomenon of intra-industry trade ni, dia bagi kesimpulan bahawa trade in manufactured good results ni from similarities of preferences among consumers in countries that are the same stage of economic development. Maknanya the country similarity theory ni suggest that most trade in manufactured goods will be between similar per capita incomes, and that intra-industry trade ni manufactured goods should be common. So differentiated goods such as automobile, expensive electronics equipments and personal care products ni, maknanya ada brand name, product reputations, dia memberikan kata peranan yang utama dalam consumer decision making. Tapi kalau undifferentiated goods such as coal, okay, around petroleum products, okay, dia play a minor role dalam consumer purchase decision, sebab benda yang ini undifferentiated goods kan. So intra-industry dengan inter-industry, kena faham. International trade banyak consist of intra-industry trade. Okay, right? So this is orang kata new trade theory. Dia more kepada incorporates the impact of economies of scale on trade in differentiated goods. Dia tak pergi kepada undifferentiated goods. Dia predicts that intra-industry trade will be commonplace. Okay, bukan inter-industry. Dia predict intra-industry. Awak kata harap awak faham lah Boleh kata dengar balik ataupun baca dalam buku nota modul yang disediakan oleh Madam NFU ataupun rujuk pada buku teks. Okay. So, new trade theory pun ada menyatakan bahawa bila obtaining a sustainable competitive advantage, maknanya kita akan pergi kepada owning IP rights kita, intellectual property rights kita. Kita akan pergi kepada investing research and development, R&D, sebab nak keluarkan produk baru, nak tengok entry cost macam mana, nak masuk dalam sesuatu kata market tu bukan senang. Lepas tu kita akan achieve the economies of scope, kita exploit the experience curve. Okay, so economies of scope ni maknanya bila firm's average cost dia decrease tapi number of different products selling is increase. So lower cost give the firm of competitive advantage of kata dari segi global yang punya competition lah, right? Itu pun penting juga nak tengok, bukan suka-suka nak tengok. So, Porter's theory of national competitive advantage. Dia tengok kepada beberapa faktor. Factor conditions maknanya country's factor of production affect the abilities to compete. Okay. Maknanya dia tengok pada basic factors. Dia pergi pada land, labour and capital. Kalau katakan tak cukup benda ni, maknanya susahlah dia nak buat trading. Demand condition, the existence of orang kata large, sophisticated consumer base often simulates the development and distribution of innovative product. Biasalah, kalau ada demand mesti ada supply. Okay, so related and supporting industries, bila kita nak keluarkan produk ni, kita akan tengok secara keseluruhan, ada tak industri lain yang ada berdekatan. Jadi maknanya competition pun akan influence the suppliers. Okay, dia akan bawa lead pada lower prices, dia akan pergi pada higher quality product sebab semua orang nak keluarkan kan produk yang lebih kurang sama, and akan ada technological innovation, in the input market. And lastly will be the firm strategy, the structure and the rivalry. Bila kata ni maknanya firm pun, orang kata company yang nak keluarkan produk ni, dia akan cuba lagi fikirkan strategi mana. Satu ialah of course dia akan cari yang reducing the cost. Lepas tu boosting product quality. And then of course dia nak pastikan productivity dia makin naik dan dia akan keluarkan produk yang lebih berinovatif. Right? So ini dia bila kita nak tengok comparison. So, in summary, no single theory of international trade explains the all, semua flow of trading among countries. The classical country-based theories are useful in explaining the inter-industry trade of homogeneous, lebih kurang sama, differentiated products, such as agricultural goods, raw materials and processed goods like steel and aluminium. The firm-based theories pula, dia lebih pada understanding intra-industry. Alright. So, dia heterogeneous, dia bukan homogeneous, dia heterogeneous. Differentiated goods, such as, contohnya lah, tengok kepada Samsung sendiri. Tengok pada Samsung, dia punya fokus pada smartphones tu. Caterpillar, bulldozers dia. Many of which are sold in the basis of their brand names and reputation. So itu summary untuk beza of theories of international trade. Country-based theory dengan firm-based theory. You can see from the slide. Beberapa theories on country-based theory yang baru saya terangkan tadi ialah mercantilism, absolute advantage, comparative advantage, HO theory. Tapi kalau katakan firm-based theory, you tengok, country is unit of analysis for country-based theory. Tapi kalau firm-based theory, dia pergi pada firm. So maknanya mana-mana pun you boleh pergi asalkan akan berlaku trading kat situ lah. Right? So, overview of international investment. Kita akan pergi sekali lagi sebab kita akan lebih detail selepas ni. So, types of international investment. Ini yang kita akan tengok sebenarnya bila kita dalam kelas tutorial. Nanti kita akan bincangkan mana FPI kita, mana FDI kita. Right? So, FPI ialah sebenarnya represent passive holding of securities of foreign stocks, bonds or other financial assets. Maknanya, kita akan seek untuk lebih banyak FPI ataupun kita nak pergi pada FDI. Mana satu sebenarnya yang mendatangkan investment yang berkembang untuk negara kita. However, kalau dari segi FDI pula, acquisition of foreign assets for the purpose of controlling them. Maknanya kita FDI ni ada banyak bentuk. Contohnya purchase of existing assets in foreign country, new investment in property, plant and equipment, and participation in joint venture with a local partner pun dikira sebagai FDI. So kita akan tengok nanti dalam kelas tutorial mana satu sebenarnya investment usahawan kita Malaysia yang melibatkan FPI ataupun FDI. Kena korek-korek sikit. So saya dah bagi hint untuk awak punya assignment ni. Right? So inilah dia FDI by recipient in trillion of dollars. Tapi ni orang kata data dah lama. You can see from orang kata the latest data, but it's actually increasing lah. Until now it's still increasing even though pandemic hits us. Right? Sources of FDI in United States. Ini menarik ni. Maksudnya US ni penerima FDI yang agak besar juga. walaupun dia sebenarnya negara yang memang maju dan established dari segi dia punya wealth, however dia pun receive FDI, right? So bila kita nak pergi orang kata fokus pada FDI ni, dia akan fokus pada the role of firm. So ownership advantage theory suggests that a firm owning a valuable asset akan create competitive advantage. Maknanya domestically it can use to penetrate the foreign markets through FDI. The asset could be, for example, superior technology, a well-known brand name ataupun economies of scale. So, bila jadi macam ni, if transaction cost is high, choose mode of entry like FDI. Maknanya, buat apa kita susah payah buat itu, kita buat dekat tempat yang lebih murah insyaAllah. Contohnya macam tu. If transaction cost is low, choose simpler mode of entry. Maknanya kita export, kita license. Okay, so kita ada ownership advantages, kita ada internalization theory, kita ada Dunning-Eclectic theory. So bila Dunning-Eclectic theory ni, dia more kepada ownership advantage, maknanya the firm must own some unique competitive advantage that overcomes the disadvantages of competing with foreign firms on their home markets. Okay, maknanya bila FDI ni kita nak buat ni, kita pastikan yang kita ni ada lebih kelebihan dari segi ownership. Location advantage maknanya kita punya business activity must be more profitable dekat foreign location. Maknanya kita buat dekat US tu, maknanya US tu lebih profit untuk kita buat dekat negara kita sendiri. Okay, internalization kata advantage maknanya the firm must benefit from controlling the foreign business. Sebab kita buat kat tempat orang lain, so kita kena ada kekuatan dari segi controlling the business itself. And ini melibatkan transaction cost, which is cost of negotiating, monitoring and enforcing into a contract. Benda-benda ni melibatkan skill dan kita kena faham bila nak buat FDI ni bukan senang. So ini antara 3 factors dalam Dunning-Eclectic theory yang kita akan tengok bila negara tu ambil keputusan untuk buat FDI di negara lain. Okay. Contohnya, you boleh tengoklah Vivi Yusof kilang dia kat mana. Okay. Kenapa dia buat kat situ? Kita akan tengok dari segi supply factors ni that encourage FDI ni melibatkan production cost. Of course lah. Sebab bila production cost kurang, dia akan bagi lower kata land prices, tax rate. Sebab benda-benda macam ni akan mendatangkan kesan untuk awak berurusan, berniaga, trading in the company that you choose to do the FDI. Logistik, kalau katakan transportation cost dia agak tinggi, susah jugalah untuk buat FDI kat situ. So maknanya dia kena choose to produce in the foreign market rather than export from domestic factories. Maknanya bila dia melibatkan FDI tu, dia akan pergi tengok pada transportation cost tu sama ada berbalik atau tidak untuk dia buat FDI tu. And then availability of natural resources. Kadang-kadang kat tempat dia sendiri untuk dia berurusan, natural resources ni tak cukup kuat, tapi dia sanggup pergi kat tempat lain dan dia laburkan di tempat untuk negara lain supaya dia boleh dapat pulangan yang lebih. Okay. And then of course lah, dia nak dapat obtain access raw materials. Bila kita kata resource ability ni, access to technology melibatkan kita boleh produce produk tu ataupun kita boleh produce the goods and services because kita ada kekuatan dari segi accessing the technology. Sebab mudah orang kata producing products because the technology involved in our FDI tu. Right? So bila orang kata demand factors ni ada, so dia akan encourage FDI dari segi customer access, marketing advantages, okay, exploitation of competitive advantages. Contohnya maknanya orang dah nampak brand name tu. Orang dah tengok pun orang kata how actually you operate. Contohnya kita ada kilang Honda di Melaka. Okay. Kita dah ada kilang Hershey di sini. So, itu semua saya bagi hint tu. Banyak sebenarnya yang kita akan tengok. Customer mobility, a firm's FDI also may be motivated by its customer or clients. So, if one of a firm's existing customer builds a foreign factory, so the firm may decide to locate new facilities nearby. So, maknanya kadang-kadang customer ataupun kita sendiri boleh melihat kepada kekuatan customer of the trading itself. Okay. And political factors, trade barriers, susah nak berniaga kat negara tu sebab macam-macam, ada tak stabil ke ataupun dia punya polisi susah untuk berniaga ke, ataupun insentif. You come here, you get this kind of orang kata exemption. Tu yang nak dengar tu, right? So you can look back to understand this chapter by looking at these questions. Faham balik what is international trade and what forms of international business is explained by the theory of comparative advantage. Sebenarnya kalau saya akan pergi balik dekat sini lah kalau nak tengok teori. Okay, kita akan pergi balik, okay, the summary of all theories yang ada ni. Okay, tadi saya dah tunjukkan. Sekejap, ya. This one. Okay. Yes. Okay, yang which you akan tengok fokus dia apa dan apa sebenarnya tujuan dia. Right? So, other than that, I think I will finish this chapter. And yes, please do give feedbacks and I'll give you some of hints what you're gonna do, and looking back of all the things that happening in Malaysia in terms of the industrial trade, producing goods or services, and kita akan tengok firm mana yang sebenarnya ada FDI di luar negara dan kenapa dia pilih di luar negara. Dah start dah cari, okay, all the products and kata services, goods and services yang ada di luar negara yang diusahakan oleh usahawan kita sendiri. Okay, with that, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Kita jumpa lagi. Thank you for listening, and I'm hoping that you guys can do your revision on your own and keep on giving feedback in our class. Assalamualaikum.